It happened most curiously that a Mr. Jackson, I believe a government officer of the United States, was about this same period amusing himself by fishing at Salicita and caught two viviparous fish, a male and a female. On cutting open the female to obtain a piece of the belly for bait, he, like myself, was astonished to see a whole bevy of tiny fish come scrambling out, and at first imagined, as I did, that they had been swallowed. He immediately wrote a letter to Professor Agiz, sending the mutilated fish, having previously satisfied himself that they had not been devoured, and stating at length his singular discovery. The professor was astonished and disbelieved at the possibility of the fish being viviparous, imagining some error had crept into the statement sent him by Mr. Jackson, but other fish in similar state were subsequently obtained by Mr. Carey and forwarded to the learned professor. The fact was that most undeniably established that this and many other species were strictly viviparous. I have spoken of this at some length because it is a curious coincidence that the same fact should be discovered by two men a long distance apart about the same date, and by both in the same way, by sheer accident. Now we come to a ticklish question. How are the young fish vitalized in the abdomen of the mother? In this case, I shall adopt what I conceive to be the most straightforward course, which is candidly to give my own thoughts, and solicit from abler, older, and better physiologists their opinions or theories. For I sincerely think this is a question well worth careful investigation. I believe the ova, after impregnation, at first go through the same transformation in the ovarium as it would do, supposing it would have spawned and fecundated in the ordinary spawning bed, but only up to a certain point. Then I think the membrane unfolding the ova, that have by this time assumed a fish-like type, take on the character and functions of a placental membrane, and the young fish are supplied by umbilical cord, just as in the case of podal mammal. But a third change takes place. There can be no doubt that the young fish I cut out, and that swim away, had breathed before they were freed from their mother. Hence I am led to think that a short time prior to the birth of the young sea water had access to this marsupial sac, washes over the infant fish. The gills assume their normal actions, and the regular systemic circle is established. Maturity attained, the umbilical attachment snaps, and the little fish, perfect in every detail of its organization, is launched into the deep to brave its many perils and shift for itself. The strong transverse muscles attached to the powerful sphincter constituting the genital opening acting from the abdominal walls, I imagine, are in some way concerned in emitting the seawater, and it appears to me a contrivance immediately adapted to effect such a purpose. But how impregnation takes place, I may at once honestly confess, I do not know. The male is much like the female, but more slim, and the milt just like that of other fish. I can only conjecture that fecundation is accomplished through the medium of seawater emitted by the curiously contrived floodgate of the female, carrying in its milt germs and washing them over the ova. The actual period of uterogestation I am by no means sure about, but I am inclined to think they breed twice in the year. It is worthy of remark that the young fish mature are very large when compared to the size of the mother. In a female fish 11 inches in length, the young were 3 inches long, the adult fish 4.5 inches high, the young an inch. The only instance I can find recorded of a viviparous fish bearing any analogy to the and Bociate is the viviparous blenny. Of course, I exclude the sharks and rays. Of the viviparous blenny, little or nothing appears to be known, on reference to Pennant's British Biology. All he says is that it was discovered by Schoenveld, and that Sir Robert Sibbald afterwards found it on the Scotch coast, and it was mentioned by Linnaeus in his account of the Swedish Museum. I quote the following paragraph verbatim from Pennant's British Zoology. Speaking of the blenny, he goes on to say, it is viviparous, bringing forth 200 or 300 young at a time. Its season of maturation is a little after the depths of winter. Before midsummer, it quits the bays and shores and retires into the deep, where it is commonly taken. It comes into the mouth of the river Esk at Wibley, Yorkshire, where it is frequently taken off the bridge. In Cuba, Animal Kingdom, Volume I, Fish, all I can glean is that the blenny is viviparous. Yarrell, in his British Fishes, speaks of a Mr. Lowe, who put a number of small fishes, the young of the blenny, in a tumbler of seawater, in which they increased in size, but eventually died from want of fresh water. Again, he quotes from Mr. Neal, who saw in the Edinburgh market in 1807 several dozens of young fish escape alive from the female. The arrangement of the perfectly formed young in the total sac of the gravid female is very remarkable. It is quite clear from the above questions that there is an analogy, if not a close one, between the reproductive organs of the blenny and those of the viviparous fish from the North Sea, West Seas. For the foetal sac of the gravid female evidently means that there is a kind of placental sac in which the young are contained. But it leaves us quite as much in the dark as ever as how the foetal life is supported. As the ova deposited in the unusual way when fecunded contains all that is requisite for the development of the embryo, it is just possible that the same process goes on in the womb of the female viviparous fish, and that the foetal sac is only a wrapper, formed by the widened end of the ovary, but still, I maintain that it fulfills a far more important duty. I fear I have been rather prolix in the foregoing descriptions, but I must plead the novelty and importance of the subject as my excuse. The most beautiful of all the species of these fish is the sapphire perch, so called by the traders. Very plentiful in Puget Sound. 18 exquisitely beautiful mazarine blue lines or stripes mark its entire length, from head to tail, and above and below this line are a number of spots of dazzling blue, arranged in a crescent shape about the eyes and gill covers. Between these spots the color changes as it does in the dolphin, showing off a kind of fluorescent light of varying shades of gold, purple, and green. The back bright blue but darker than the stripes, the belly white marked by golden yellow streaks. By now, for the most important feature in the history of these fish, that of bringing into the world their young alive, self-dependent, and self-supporting, as perfect as in the minutest organization of the parent fish that gives birth, the generative apparatus of the female fish when it is in a gravid state may be defined as a large bag or sac. Ramifying over its surface may be seen a most complicated and strangely beautiful vascular arrangement. A network of vessels, the use of which is clearly to convey the life-living fluid to the infant fish and carry it back again, after having served its destined purpose to be revived for future use. The way this sac is, as it were, folded, and the different compartments made for the accommodation of the embryonic fish is most singular, and very difficult to describe clearly. The best illustration I can think of is an orange. You must imagine the orange divided in its regular number of little wedges shaped pieces, and each piece to represent a fish. That the rind of the orange is a delicate membrane having a globular shape and easily compressed or folded. You must now desire to fit the pieces together again in original orange shape, but you must begin on the outside of the globular membrane, pressing in with each section of fold the membrane. Remember that each represents a fish. When each piece is in its place, you will still have the sack in its rounded form, but the rind or membrane have been folded in with the different pieces. If I have made myself understood, it will be seen that there must be a double fold of membrane between each fish portion of orange. This is exactly the way the fish are packed in the novel placental sac. If it were practicable to remove each fish from its space and the sac retain its normal shape, there would be 12 or 14 openings, depending upon the number of young fish. The wall of each division being a double fold of membrane, the double edges wrapping or as it were folding over the fish. Now make a hole in the end of this folded bag and blow it full of air, and you get at once the globe-shaped membranous sac I have likened to an orange.